Hey, it's Vincent here from Vincent Games, your untapped source of MTG tips, info and discussion. If you're interested in building a Magic the Gathering deck, or you have an idea in your head that you're just really not sure how to construct that into a 60 card deck, then stick around, as in this video I show you a really easy way to build a Magic the Gathering deck. So as I said in the intro, this video is going to be all about how to build a Magic the Gathering deck. This will be a standard deck, so it will be 60 cards and not have any more than 4 copies of a single card except for basic lands. So if you're brand new to Magic, this video is going to be assuming that you may have a bit more knowledge about the game than you might feel that you do, but I wouldn't worry about that. This is just going to be a video to hopefully encourage you to just brew, just to come up with ideas and just flesh out a deck, and hopefully empower you to actually build something cohesive with it, rather than just be thinking, oh, I like a couple of cards but I just don't know how to build a deck, I don't know the best way to go around it, how many lands do I need? There's just one question, how many creatures do I need to put in the deck, how many instants or sorceries, where the hell do I start? So what I would say to you is that if you're just starting out with this process, there are no real rules. There may be some things that are just better to do in deck building process than others, but I'm not going to worry so much on that now. And as a caveat to this video, the deck I build is, I'm not sitting here and saying this is going to be the best deck, and this way of building a deck is how to build good decks. That's just silly, because there's so many different factors that would go into what makes a deck good in any given context. So this is just more about the process of building a deck, to hopefully give you a bit of an insight into how I go about it and others might go about it, and essentially provide you with some tools that help you with your deck building. So as you can see, the first port of call is Gatherer. When I'm putting together a deck, I 99% of the time will refer to Gatherer, because I'm not an encyclopedia and I don't remember every card. If you've not heard of Gatherer, then if you just type in into Google Gatherer, then it's one of the first things that comes up. It's basically the Magic the Gathering database, and you can search for every card ever printed and filter by the format that you wish. Obviously, as I mentioned before, we're going to be building a standard deck, so I'm straight away going to be switching that to standard. But before we dive in, the first thing I'd recommend is, before you just write down all your ideas, I would recommend coming up with some sort of template. If you have access to Microsoft Excel, that is a really good basic way of doing it. As you can see here, I've created a very rough and ready template to basically store and organize the deck, the cards, as I build the deck. Now, better than this are apps that exist. If you don't have any of that, then don't worry, because you could create something like this, which is not as shiny and efficient and cool as that sort of stuff, but in terms of just building a deck, it's very useful, and it's going to be more than sufficient for what I'm going to be doing. So as you can see, I've grouped the cells into different sections. If you're not really that great with Excel, then the formulas are very simple. All you need to do is equals the sum of, and then in brackets, the range of cells. So C4, C16, and it gives you the total there. And then in this one here, I've done equals the sum of those cells there, and not included the sideboard. Now, I've been lazy and just stretched across that range there, whereas you could highlight each individual cell. But this isn't a tutorial for Excel, but that's just to show you how easy. If you're not really, it's easy for me to say, oh yeah, just create something in Excel. If you're not really experienced with using Excel, if you literally just copy, pause the video and copy in what I've just shown you there, then you'll be able to mock up something like this in no time at all. Or just Google how to, and then whatever you want to do in Excel, and it will pop up with the answer there. So between downloading an app or just creating something like this in Excel, it's going to save you a massive headache, because I used to basically write down all my deck ideas. I would write down, oh, okay, I want to build this deck, 4 of that card, this deck, 4 of that card. You just have scraps of paper everywhere, and I just found that really unhelpful. And if you're trying to actually be efficient with this process and not just waste time kind of on really intangible ideas, then something like this is going to really help you. And you might enjoy that process, and that might be quite an organic thing that you want to do, and that's fine. I'm not saying you shouldn't do that, but I suggest something like this, as for me it's really helped to visualize an idea. So the deck itself, and I'm going to be starting this deck building process from scratch. I basically have an idea, and that is how a lot of decks start off, with just an idea. And the idea that I've got is that there are a lot of mind control or control magic type effects in the game at the moment, in standard at the moment. It started out when I was thinking about Hostage Taker, and if you've been paying attention to the Pro Tour, you'll see that Hostage Taker is made some good showing, and also in just decks in general, it's a very powerful card. So that was wanting to be my starting point, is to play that card because it's proving to be a very powerful card. And as I may have already said, that's what kind of led me on to thinking about, actually crikey, there's a lot of take control effects. So the most obvious one that actually springs to mind is Confiscation Coup from Kaladesh, which is the, I don't know how to spell coup, I'm guessing it's got an E on the end, I can't remember, which again, this is why Gatherer is good. So you just type in a word, and we do it properly. So you tick the name box if you're looking, so you're asking Gatherer where to search, so you can search for the card's name, the card's type, so you could put land and only ask it to look for specifically lands. You could also just look for lands down here. But if I wanted to try and find a specific word on a land, then you can use that. But I'm just going, I usually have all of these boxes ticked. And yeah, there you go. So Confiscation Coup. Oh no, it doesn't have an E. I don't know if that's an American spelling or not. The other one that I was thinking of as well was the Entrancing Melody. So right off the bat, we have 12 ways to steal creatures, so which is a lot. And there's another one, Entrancing Melody, Kefnet, Final Word, I believe. I think that's what it's called. And now these are all very expensive spells, given as last word. Again, why having the Gatherer open when you do this is really useful. That's 12 ways there. And another thing that I do when I start off is I go with the benchmark of 24 land. And I don't know what the lands will be at this point, but this helps me to see how many cards are in the deck as we go. So this is 24 lands, and obviously I'm going to have some amount of islands, I would have thought, so I'll just put island in there for now. And 24 lands. Now that's my benchmark. If we're a more aggressive deck, or we have cards like Attune the Ether or Renegade Map, ways of getting mana that aren't just lands, Servant of the Conduit, that sort of thing, then we can try and take that number down a little bit. And if we're going to be a more controlling deck, then we can increase that number a little bit. But 24, I think, is a really solid baseline for when you're starting to build these decks, so that you're going to get essentially have 36 spells in the deck that are not lands. So we're definitely blue-black at this point, and I don't think there are any more mind control effects. But what I'm noticing already is Confiscation Coup costs 5 mana, Entrancing Melody is potentially going to cost in excess of 4 to 5 mana, Kefnet's Last Word is a 4 and this is 4, so we need some low-cost ways of interacting with our opponent, and it feels like at the moment that this is going to be a bit more of a controlling strategy, so generally limited on creatures and playing ways of dealing with our opponent's creatures. So it strikes me as Fatal Push being a really good thing to have in the deck. So I have that as a 4 of initially for now because it's very, very good. It kills a lot of stuff. And ooh, I've just thought of another creature that I think takes control of stuff. Captain something. Don't know if Captain goes to Captivating. Yes, Captivating Crew. So this allows you to gain control, not permanently, but that could be something we want in this deck. Which is red, which might not be great, but if we play red and we want removal, then that does open up Harness Lightning, and that does play nicely with Confiscation Coup. So if we assume we are in red, then that gives us arguably the two best removal spells in the format between Fatal Push and Harness Lightning, at least the mana efficient ones. And if you think, as I said before, we need ways of dealing with early threats to build up to our control magic effects, then this is a pretty solid addition. And if you're playing ways to get energy, then it might be nice to have Glimmer of Genius, as that is a way of increasing the energy so we can set up for a good confiscation queue. I'm going to put 4 for now. We probably don't want to play 4 of that necessarily. Ooh. But playing those 3 cards, that makes me want something like a Torrential Gearhulk, maybe, to then re-get these, to get these instants back. If we're playing Torrential Gearhulk, then that makes me feel like it's going to be something like a blue-black control deck, which blue-black control plays Scarab God. Scarab God would actually be really good in this deck and fit with the theme as well, in terms of just stealing stuff our opponents play, because we can kill something with Fatal Push and Harness Lightning and then steal it back with the Scarab God. So actually that's really cool. That makes me feel like maybe we can cut the Captivating Crew. That doesn't necessarily fit the kind of cards that the Scarab God and Torrential Gearhulk actually are. We say 2 Scarab God because it's a legend, I don't want too many of them, and we already have Confiscation Queue at 5 mana, and 3 Torrential Gearhulk as, I just think that's just a really strong card. Now we have the makings of an alternative on Grixis control, which makes me now think it would be good, it would be potentially useful to round out the last few cards to have a look at that sort of archetype. So this is the other thing I do, is see what decks already exist along a similar vein to what you already do. So I've just gone to MTGtop8.com, which is a website that looks at the decks that have done very well in events and compiles them here. So it's a really good place for data. So blue-black control, but we are potentially Grixis, so I might actually look at the Grixis controls. Arguably the only red really we have is for Harness Lightning, but Harness Lightning is something that plays very nicely with the Scarab, Torrential Gearhulk, and obviously Confiscation Queue as well. So I'm happy to stick with Grixis for the moment. And Shaheen Surani is a good player, right? So let's have a look at this deck. Okay, Aether Hub is a good shout. So again, straight away, it really helps to kind of, because I wouldn't necessarily thought of Aether Hub straight away, and that is a land that is going to be very sensible to have in not only a 3-colour deck, but also a deck that wants energy. So that's good to have there. And then we have, okay, 2 Scarab God, which is about right in a control shell, so I wasn't wrong there. 4 Gearhulks, but Gearhulk isn't our main kind of bag. This is just something we're looking at here for ideas. So they've gone for the full 4 Glimmer of Genius, 4 Harness Lightning, a Sweeper, which my theory would be we wouldn't need a Sweeper in our main deck because we have so many other creatures. We don't want to be playing Sweepers if we're stealing our opponent's creatures, rather than just, because this deck is killing our opponent's creatures, and then playing something like Our Devastation to help with that. Whereas I think it's a bit of a non-bow with taking our opponent's creatures and then playing a Sweeper to kill what would then be our creatures. I like Disallow as a way of stopping things that aren't creatures, because we've got a lot of ways to stop creatures, but no ways to stop something like an Approach of the Second Sun or other people's counter spells. So that might be quite nice. So I think a Disallow would be a sensible thing to have. And I like 2 odd because it's not something you're not going to want to counter everything our opponent does, but it's nice to have access to some amount of them. And the more I look at Kefnet's Last Word, as we have some other kill spells, I think the cost of having to have our mana not untapped is probably quite high. So we do have a fair amount of stuff we can do at 4 mana, so maybe we should reduce that. Because we now have Glimmer of Genius, which we want to cast on 4, and Hostage Taker that we want to cast on 4. So we should maybe consider reducing the amount of Kefnet's Last Words And we can probably cut a Fatal Push actually, because we don't need to kill everything that our opponents play early. And the other thing I'm going to do is shamelessly copy this land base, because looking at this, we have, believe it, only a little bit of red. They have a fair amount of red, but we need a bit more black. But then we want red early, so I'm going to, as a starting point, just mimic a lot of this stuff here, because the benefit of doing this and copying the mana base here is this is a mana base that they've tested out and they know is good, whereas I haven't tested this idea. I don't know. I like Field of Ruin. It's a good card. I don't know what is going to be good, what is going to be bad, so I would be unsure where to start with the land base. So this essentially allows me to just have a starting point that I can then essentially modify as I see fit. So at the moment I'm seeing 4 mountains in our only splashing for Harness Lightning deck, which is really not something I'm that interested in. They'll probably be something that I put swamps in. Obviously I think we want 4 Spellbluff Canal as the dual red and blue land. 4 Aether Hubs is a solid inclusion, happy with that. Canyon Slough as the red black land seems quite good as well, because it cycles as well as fetid pools. So what we might do is just swap some of those numbers around, so 3 fetid pools, 2 Canyon Sloughs, because the red splash is less important in our deck than in these, Hour of Devastation, needing double red. So get rid of that, and I think mountain, and then maybe 3 swamps. So red is definitely more of a splash. So in this deck we have 4, 7, 8, 12. So just under half is red. So a few more. Let me just go 2 mountain and 2 swamp and see how that goes for now. Just to increase. So we don't need black that much, and we don't need red that much really at all. So black's really only there for Fatal Push and the Scarab God. I think 1 mountain and then having more Drowned Catacombs is probably better actually. As we've increased our swamp count, and so we actually could probably reduce the amount of islands and then have the full 4 Drowned Catacombs. That's probably better. So that feels good for now. I'm happy to try that out there. A much more accurate way of doing this would be to line out all the cards, count up all the coloured symbols, and work out the ratios of blue to black to red and how early you want them, to then actually get a more accurate mana base. So what I've done there is just sort of plucking the numbers, or adjusting the numbers. This is a really rushed way of doing the mana base in particular, and something I would say is actually a much better way of doing it is to do what I just said, where you work out the ratios of the mana you need, and you'll be able to have a look at and then build your mana base that way, rather than just sort of adjusting the numbers there. But just for the sake of quickness for this video, that's what I've just done for there. What I would actually do at this point is to work out the ratios and have a look, actually see what looked a lot better. Because otherwise you could build a deck that just doesn't work because of the mana base. The mana base is so important. So to round this out, what I quite like the idea of is something like a couple of opts. So that'll be good. Looking at these decks, I don't think we need as much removal as these sort of control decks have, because we're just not necessarily, we're just not that same play. We don't need the removal as much, because things like Essence Scatter or Unsung or Vraska's Contempt, I don't like this deck, would be a little bit unnecessary, because we're stealing our opponent's creatures. Okay, sideboard. I'll have a look here to see what kind of cards that I would want to have in the sideboard. Multi-4 wonder, how interesting. So when I put a sideboard together, I just think of, I was having a look here, this is the sort of, this I think is a really good, again, starting point for a sideboard. I'm not too worried on a sideboard initially, because as I would play test the deck, you get more of an idea about what you would then want to have access to. You think, okay, I didn't do very well against red, it'd be good to have some way against dealing with early creatures from opponents, so then you might be thinking, okay, I'll put more magma sprays in. So what I tend to do is, I like 3 negate as a nice control option. I like the 4th fatal push as a way of killing early creatures. Aggressive decks, like duress in some number. I like Whirler Virtuoso actually that they've done. I'm going to steal this from him as a good creature against control and red perhaps. Just an extra creature, that could be quite good. And I like Gonti against Teamer. So just thinking of decks that exist in the metagaming wave, that would be good. And it kind of fits the theme actually, Gonti, Lord of Luxury, as taking creatures from our opponent's deck. So maybe he should go in the main actually. No, we've already got a lot of 4-drops. Doomfall is quite nice. I like Doomfall as a way of thinking of Teamer again. And the Chandra's Defeat would actually be really good options against Ramanap Red. So I'm going to put that in as 3, so we just need 1 more card. So maybe just have the 4th negate for now. So it's a very rough and ready sideboard, but it's something that, again, would be very, very much organic and subject to change. So I've chosen the ops just as a way to kind of filter our draws and get the cards we need. I've gone for 26 lands in the end, because we've started to lean towards more sort of control style deck. This would be my starting point for the deck now. So this might look a bit like a bit of a mess. So what I'm going to try and do is lay it out in a different format and see if I can make sense of it a bit better. And here is a way in which I might lay this out. So I've changed the sideboard up a little bit. I added in, I reduced one of the negates and put in a Vizier of Many Faces as just another creature to sideboard into. Just kind of testing out ideas that I've seen in other places and kind of getting a feel from there. So I'm not overly concerned about the sideboard to begin with. And laying out like this, as I mentioned before, you can really see how little the red splash actually is. So it's nice to then have this here to, as I said before, look at your mana curve, so what cards you've got appearing at what cost. So you only have a couple of low drops, only a few 2-drops, and so on and so forth. Get an idea from there. Now, some people might be looking at this and thinking, oh, the way in which I've built this deck is really ignoring mana curve and not having even really thought about it that much. I've only really discussed it recently, saying I've got a lot of 4-drops. So it's good basically when you're building a deck to not have loads of cards at one specific first mana cost, which might be a problem for this deck because we have 4 Hostage Taker, 2 Kefnit's Last Word, and 4 Glimmer of Genius. So that's 10 cards at first mana cost 4, potentially more if you look at Entrancing Melody. So that could be a massive problem with this deck. It's something I would probably end up cutting, might well be Kefnit's Last Word. There's plenty of other cards we could play, looking at the other Grixis list we saw, like Searcher's Counter, which is an awesome card. However, I know that card's good, so when I'm trying to come up with ideas, I'm more inclined to try out the cards I don't know will be good. And then I will always know that that is an option, because that is definitely a good card. I don't need to test with that card to know that's good, whereas I want to try out the other cards here and see how they get on. So this is the deck that I've ended up with, and I have no idea if this will be good or not. I may make a video just messing about with this, trying it out, seeing how good it is, but I hope this has been interesting in some way about how you can go around building a deck. I've breezed through it very, very quickly, and so I'm sorry if I've gone quite fast through this, but it's not to tell you how to do it, but it's how I've done it, and hopefully it's given you a couple of ideas, a couple of useful things to think about when you go about building your own deck, as this isn't the only way you can do it. And I know there's some people out there that really hate net decking, just looking on the internet saying, oh, I'll just copy that, but that can be a useful tool as well as coming up with your own ideas. And so I wouldn't shy away from using these tools that are there. At the end of the day, these resources are really useful for you to help build better decks, so take advantage of them. Don't be put off using stuff like that. It's not to say you're not being creative if you look at someone else's deck and copy ideas from it, but actually you're if you've come up with an idea and you're thinking, how do I just round this out, then saying, okay, I like this control list that this guy's done, and you know, he's a good player, so I trust that actually some of the choices he's made are actually going to be sensible. So if you made a deck that looks very similar to this, and you're looking at ideas to try and round out a couple of last choices, then this is a great thing to look at. I'm sure there are other sites as well that you may be using that you prefer to this one, so take full advantage of them. But anyway, that's enough from me for now. I really hope that you've enjoyed this video and that you've got something from this. And if you have, then let me know by leaving a like on the video or commenting, and let me know if it's been useful to you at all. Or if this has sparked an idea for a video that you'd like to see, then let me know about that as well. If there's something about the game that you'd like to hear me discuss, then leave a comment here or on my Facebook page, which you can see at the bottom of the screen there, and ask me a question and I might make a video on it. And if you like what you see here, then please do consider subscribing. It supports the channel and makes sure you're up to date with all the videos that I produce. But in the meantime, thanks very much for watching, and stay tuned for more.